I've been following the pod for a minute. My favorite episode is Peter Sutherland. That episode was just so good. Just wanted to commend you on that one. But I had been wanting to talk to you for a while, and I was in the middle of like moving my whole life from Denver to Long Beach, and I just was like, there's too much going on in my life and in my world that I was like, kind of hadn't been making as much work as I had wanted to. Um, and so I was like, I'm gonna pause on doing any kind of like interviews or anything until I get like settled in. Um, so I had been wanting to talk to you, but I just, wanted to wait for the right time.
That's very perfect. Like some people, the same thing. We like talk about it and then put it off, and that's because of something very small happening within the city. Like there's the tiniest things will push back episodes. So a cross country move is by far an acceptable reason, like the most acceptable reason. And the way these work, they're like so relaxed and cool. So if the person isn't relaxed and cool at the moment, it's gonna throw it all off. So I'm glad we waited, and I'm glad we're doing it now. And yeah, I'm never in a rush to do them. There's plenty of people that, we talk about them and they happen when they're gonna happen. Peter is a great example. We had talked for a while about doing one, and then just one day he confirmed, we would actually do one, and then it happened. I'm glad you like that one. That's one of my favorites as well, and I don't really understand why he agreed to do it, especially so early on when there wasn't as much social proof of it being a place where people would want to come and talk. So, yeah, once again, one of my favorites. Glad you liked it.
Yeah, the story of like the Black Widow fight and everything was just really, it was so entertaining. So yeah, just like one of I've listened to it two or three times, I think, actually.
That's amazing. That must be where all the streams are coming from.
For me, yeah, I'm just like playing it every day, as I start my day with my coffee, listening to the Peter Sutherland episode. Um, yeah, so the thing I'm working on right now is an exhibition that's opening on July 11th in Denver. That's like my hometown where I was born and raised. And this exhibition that I'm working on is called Wasted Days and Wasted Nights. And it's the title of a song by this like Tex-Mex um, pop star named Freddie Fender. And so that was my grandmother Sarah Sanchez's like favorite song. My mom told me, and so we thought it was kind of a good title for this show. And so we're creating an exhibition, and we're also making like a zine to go along with it, and they're all going to be titled "Wasted Days" and "Wasted Nights," both of them. And so the special thing about this exhibition is that one, it's my first exhibition after leaving my hometown and moving to California, to go back and do an art show there in Denver. But I think the bigger part of this whole project is that I'm working with my son, Jonas Sanchez. He's 22. He recently graduated from the University of Colorado, Denver, with a BA in art history. And he's just like this really bright, smart kid. And he grew up in galleries and museums with us, like, dragging him to shows all the time. So I think he has this unique perspective on curating and the art world. So it's a collaboration between my son and I. And he was really pushing me in my collage work to explore my family history. And in my collage work, I have always like used things that were that I would find like Egyptian art, statues and pyramids, or Greek busts, or just like really random, like fashion, like vintage Vogue magazines or Life magazines. And so it was never really about me. I would take all these images, magazines, and books, cut them up, run them through kind of my own filter, and then make these collages for like, I've been doing these since like 2005 or something. And never really have I talked about my own kind of, they're not really about me. They're kind of just this thing I output into the world. And even my name, Mario Zoots, was kind of this nom de plume. It was like a pen name that had come up, like an alter ego. Um, and I learned that through graffiti, kind of like coming up with a name and seeing how big you could make it and see what you could turn that into. And so Mario Zoots became like, after I kind of quit graffiti, Mario Zoots became this like second project of like, what can I turn this into? So there was a lot of like weird, like witchy, occult, kind of like strange looking collage that was like psychological and kind of just weird. So I did that for like a really long time. Um, but my son was like, "Hey, we should do this show, and I want you to explore like your family heritage and stories of my grandparents." And like my mom was born in Los Angeles and then moved to Denver when she was like 8. And so moving to Long Beach and being kind of like where my family was back in the 60s and 70s has also been kind of strange that the timing of this all kind of happened at the same time. Because when Jonas and I had come up with the idea of the show, I was still living in Denver and I didn't know I was going to be living in Long Beach. So there's this kind of odd coincidence now that I'm in California. So yeah, this is just an exhibition between my son and we explore a lot of personal and family themes.
Was that or is that his first showcase of his work as well? Like being so young, I wonder how many does he have under his belt?
Yeah, so he moved to Boulder to go to college, and while he was there, him and his buddies had an apartment, and they turned the living room into a gallery. And so they would do like, they did like 6 openings at their house in Boulder while they were in college, and just like invited people. And then it was kind of started off really small with just their friends, but then soon by the end of it, there was like professors from like the college coming. There was like curators from the Boulder Museum of Contemporary Art coming. And it just became this thing. And he realized he was good at like, he knows how to talk about art. He's very social and he likes to bring people together. And he's super smart and a great writer. So he started the gallery at the house. And then when he moved back to Denver, he started working with Dateline Gallery, which is in the Arts District in Denver. And he curated like 3 shows there over the last year. And now he's also employed at the MCA Denver as a researcher. So he really has a lot under his belt.
That's yeah, a lot of stuff. Like, actually, that seems like almost a good effort, but almost too much stuff to keep on top of.
Yeah, he's been staying really busy and he's just very like entrepreneurial, and he just like yesterday he started his own LLC because he's a contractor working with different people, and he's just very business minded.
That's incredible. That I mean, I wouldn't really have the wherewithal to do that, and I'm much older than he is. So that's the very incredible and kind of inspiring. I talk to a lot of people on here about the fact, that when people have kids, if they sort of not force things on the kid, but if they're even like showing the kid certain things, the kid kind of has the choice to either like that or really not like that thing, and just kind of like when I was young, whatever my parents were telling me was cool, was probably not what I would have ended up thinking was cool. So it's interesting that you were saying he had been kind of in the gallery orbit with you, like seeing shows and everything behind the scenes, and then chose to have a career in that thing. So maybe he's the opposite of what I talked to or talk about with people on here, where it's something a child is exposed to and then ends up like actually enjoying and furthering.
Well, it wasn't a straight line. I mean, he really disliked when I would bring him to museums and galleries and get really bored. So I think it was all kind of in the, you know, like a periphery. It was just kind of like he was seeing it, but he wasn't really enjoying it. But I think there's something about being that young and being around it that he just picked it up or kind of knew. But he definitely did not think I was cool. And he did not want to be anywhere close to the art world for a long time. He started like really getting into fitness and he was like working out super hard and then became a trainer at a gym. And he was like, I do not want to do anything in the art world. But then at some point, maybe when he was like 19, he was like, I'm not gonna fight this anymore. I'm gonna like go into this because he all his friends were like that he was meeting in school and um even my friends he was like hanging out with in the art world and he just really started to be like, you know what? I know so much about this and like I'm coming from like a family that is artists. Like I'm not gonna fight this. I'm just gonna try to lean into it. So it wasn't natural. I think he really didn't want to go in that direction, but then something changed where he opened up to it.
Do you know, s- like specifically what that thing was? Where he like flipped the switch and gave into it instead of like going against it?
When he was in Boulder, I think it was he was studying sports medicine, and then he like didn't really enjoy the science part of that, and he was just like, don't I don't like this. It's not fun. And then just kind of started taking some art classes and being like, I know a lot about art, and I really like he loves history. So he's a very creative like person. Like he could be an artist, but I think his path is more on like art history and curating. So I think when he kind of found out like, oh, I don't want to be an artist, but I want to be an art historian, I think it really opened up a whole new world for him.
And then it's so interesting to me, you guys each being on kind of different ends of an art career. So, like, I assume you guys are both teaching each other like things about your own, about his curating or your art practice. You guys must be learning from each other daily.
Absolutely. He's been like interviewing me over Zoom and asking me questions about like my family and like growing up in Denver. And I'm like telling him stories that I've never told him. And so it's like all it's art, but in this weird way, it's also just like family. It's like us talking and telling stories about like my grandmother, passing these stories down to him. And we've been like talking to our family, like my mom and my aunts and cousins, and we've been getting all these family photos and scanning them all in. And at the exhibition, we're going to be making these like large black and white architectural prints of those photos that will be kind of placed around the gallery with like my artwork in between those images. And so it's like this very much, we've never talked about family like this, and I've never explored this theme in my work. So it's like lots of new ground for both of us, but it's really brought us closer together over the last few weeks.
Just very like beautiful because I've talked to people who kind of, they start working with a friend of theirs or even like someone who is kind of new to them and they build a rapport and they end up opening up and sharing certain things, but it never, I don't think it would be possible to be as like deep and relatable as family stuff between family members. So that's a very like unique situation there. I've heard of similar, but never like that like intertwined and getting like so revelatory with everything.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very emotional and it's it's a new way of working. It's so different than like anything I've done before. And it feels like and he's kind of directing the work because I'll be like, hey, I'm making these things. And he's like, okay, I like those, but I really like this direction you're going. So he's also kind of like coaching in a way or kind of directing. He's like, I want to curate this kind of work, not that kind of work. So I've been like kind of leaning into like listening to him as like a curator even, just to be like, you know, um, your like my biological father left my mother when I was like, you know, under a year old. And it's something that like I kind of grew up without a father. I had a stepfather who kind of came in later, but I never had my biological father. So when I had my son, I was very young. I was like 22 years old, and I was like doing a lot of graffiti, and I was in like art school, and so it was kind of a crazy time to have a child. So he also kind of grew up like that, but I always made a point to be like, just giving as much love as I can to my son. Has been kind of this theme that I've wanted to stick with ever since he was born. And even now, it's like I want to work with him, I want to support him, and I want to give him like the resources I have or be able to do this project and like listen to him.
It's really cool that you're, in a way, kind of having a peer review with your own son. Again, I've heard of a lot of people like getting advice or working with someone close to them on something like that, but I've never heard someone like do that with their own son, like have someone younger than them kind of giving them maybe not advice, but saying they like the direction things are going or they like this piece more than this. It's very cool. Is it hard at all to kind of take that constructive criticism from someone younger that you made?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's definitely been like, oh, I thought this was like, this is a great idea, I think, and I want to do this. And he's like, yeah, it's okay. And I like that he's not afraid to like, he's very blunt with me, and he's like, um, he's honest, and he really is like has an idea. Like he wrote the essay for the show, and so once I saw that, I was like, okay, like I understand your vision now, and like this is definitely like a collaboration. I'm way out of my comfort zone here. Like I'm making things that doesn't look like work I've made in the past.
And I mean, I assume I know the answer as I'm asking, but this working together this closely, I'm sure has changed like the entire relationship. Like you're even stronger and even more bonded together because of working on something of this nature.
Yeah, it's definitely brought us a lot closer together. And since I just left Denver, like this is the first time I've been away from my son this long. I've been now in Long Beach for like 3 months. And so it's been incredible for us to have this connection while since I've moved away to like text every day, to have Zoom calls, for him to interview me, for me to like scan my work and to show him. And he's like doing things out in Denver, like picking up work from the framer and taking it to get documented by a photographer. He's taking the family photos and getting them scanned so we can blow them up when I get there. So he's like really in the production side of it as well.
That do you mind if I ask what was the impetus behind moving to Long Beach? Like what made you move there from Denver?
Yeah, so it was for work. Um, I work for a private art collection, and we had two offices, like one based in Southern California and one in Denver. And so the guy I work for sold the building in Denver in December, and so he, invited us to come out here and to like keep working with him, but in Southern California.
I mean, moving across the country is gonna be difficult no matter what, but I assume it was a bit easier because it was more of a seamless transition. Like you were just working with the same people, doing the same sort of thing in a different city.
Exactly. I mean, I don't think I would have ever left Denver if this opportunity hadn't arisen because, I mean, it's just seamless. Like we just were kind of doing the same thing there and then coming to Long Beach and doing it here. So it was like very seamless transition.
What have you been there long enough to kind of like what are the main differences that you see between the Denver art scene and the Long Beach art scene?
Yeah, it's kind of too soon to tell, I think, because I don't really know anybody in Long Beach yet. Like whereas in Denver, we were so connected. Um, and like we had so many friends and we were really connected into the whole scene of like music and art, culture. And so we could go to like any gallery and just know everybody there. And so going out in Long Beach, it's like going somewhere and just not knowing anybody.
Is that a pro or a con to you? Like I know some people love being thrown into like a unfamiliar environment and like starting from scratch. Some people hate it. Like for me, kind of my worst nightmare, but how do you feel about it?
Well, it's not easy. And I think I was ready for a change after, I'm 44. And so I've just spent like that whole time in Denver. So I felt like it was good timing. And also, we have friends in LA. So we go up to LA quite a bit because I'm only like 45 minutes south of downtown LA. And so it feels like I'm not in LA, but I'm just like next door. So after like on the weekends, I've been going up to LA and shooting all this black and white film. Just like I'm seeing everything for the first time. So like that I've been using that as a way to kind of um keep making work or to kind of like look at the city through photography. And then there's just so much art to go see. The museums are incredible. There's so many galleries with like amazing art. So I've just been discovering so many artists and then every once in a while like bumping into someone I know. So it's a big city, and so there's a lot to do and a lot to see.
Um, I was gonna I guess this is kind of a good place. Maybe I could have asked earlier, but were you born and raised in Denver? Like your entire life until now was spent there?
Yeah, I was born at like Denver General, which is like one of the old hospitals in downtown Denver. And I was raised on the west side of Denver, which is like very Vietnamese and Mexican families and businesses. So I went to school, I raised my family, I met my partner, and I created my career in Denver. And so I've never lived anywhere but Denver until just 3 months ago.
That's I mean, just thinking about that again, like one of my probably biggest fears is being thrown into a completely new place, especially with having an entire life anchored somewhere else. But I mean, I don't want to get in anyone's head about it. It very cool. I also, it seems scary, but it also seems like you would have a ton of bonuses and be good in so many ways. And I'm thinking photo wise, it's always cool to be somewhere new. So if you're out exploring, taking black and white photos, seeing things for the first time, that is super cool. And that might outweigh the fear of that for me. Like I like experiencing new stuff maybe more than I don't like being scared of new things.
hmm It is scary. And something I've been thinking about the last couple years is like, if this doesn't terrify me or make me scared, I'm comfortable, which is good, a good place to be. But like doing public speaking or trying to curate at the collection I work at, there's like big clients, there's big names, and I get to meet big artists. And so it's like kind of scary because you're like working with these people you admire and they're like brilliant writers, curators, and artists. And so I've just been like, okay, if it scares me, this is probably a good thing. I should go in that direction. Because I think there's something when like when it works, and sometimes you fail. Like sometimes it doesn't work, or sometimes there are lonely nights, where you're just like, I have no friends. And so I'm scrolling on Instagram looking at everyone in Denver to see what they're doing. Um, but I think that I really enjoy the kind of like the challenge of it. It's not easy. It's kind of scary, but like even like doing graffiti, you kind of have there's this like if you're climbing up something high or you're going into a train yard, like there's this element of being scared or you're kind of it's like dangerous. And so I've kind of been trying to still push myself in those directions of being uncomfortable.
That, I mean, it sounds like you're finding a lot of positives in the situation. I personally, I feel I would just admit defeat. I mean, I probably wouldn't go through it, but then if I did, I probably wouldn't like find as many positive things about it. So I think it already sounds like it's better for you than it would be for me.
Yeah, I don't think it's for everybody, but I'm here and I'm trying to be optimistic about the situation, and I'm actually really enjoying it.
You mentioned before public speaking. I assume you're gonna have to give a talk for this opening. How do you feel about public speaking in the way of explaining art to people?
It's terrifying. I the last one I did, I was a visiting artist at UNR in Reno, Nevada, and I had to give a talk to like all these graduate students and like this art department with all these professors. And you're like on stage and I have my slides and I'm trying to talk about my art and my voice is like shaking and my hand is like shaky and I'm just like, okay, calm your nerves. Um, it's tough. It's really tough. And then I really kind of get in my head before it. I'm like, is this sound good? Is this even right? Am I doing the right thing? Am I talking about the right topics? Like, talking about your own work to like a large group of people can be really scary. So I did that. And every time when I finish, I'm like, why was I so nervous to do that? It really wasn't that crazy. But just leading up to it, it's like your heart starts pounding and there's a lot of I don't know, anxiety or pressure that I get right before going on stage.
That's the like 100% exactly how I feel. I uh I don't love doing it. Doing this, I always tell people is much different. Like we can't even see each other. No one can see us. The podcast, even if people listen to it or if they don't, I'm alone when I'm doing it. But being in front of people and especially like being vulnerable, trying to explain your art to a bunch of people, that's always so difficult, but then it's over and then it feels so good like when it's over, but the lead up is like I last night I had to say a couple things about the book. I'd been dreading it for weeks, and then when it was over I felt totally fine and I was glad it happened.
Yeah, exactly. And as I am kind of moving more into kind of, being a curator, it's a big part of the job is to be able to write because also I've really not, been a great writer. Or, until recently I've been writing a lot more about art. And so that is also another like terrifying thing is like, how can you write something and have it sound like academic or do the art justice? And with all the like AI tools and everything, I feel like everything I'm reading on Instagram feels like AI written. And so I've been like really just like, you know what? This as long as this isn't AI, and like when I'm writing about my work, like right now, this project with my son, I'm just like typing it out like I'm writing into a diary or like it's just for me and my son and like not worrying if it like sounds good. It's just like be who you are, be yourself and say what's on your mind. And your story is so unique to you that the more you're just yourself, the better it is. And the more people really can like, understand your unique story.
The more opportunities you have to speak in public, does it get easier? Like I'm thinking no matter how much I do it, it's the same amount of scary. For me, it does. Everyone says it gets better, but I personally, I don't think it does really. But for you, does it get better? Or is it always terrifying?
Unfortunately, it's always terrifying for me.
See, someone also told me that's good though. That means like you care enough about the presentation of these things that you're like critically thinking about it beforehand. So I like that someone told me that because then that justifies being scared.
Yeah, I just get my nerves worked up, and I'm going up to upstate New York to speak at this symposium about collage on July 23rd, I believe. And so I'm kind of preparing that now, just like what to talk about and how to like explain that. But I'm always like cool, like leading up to it. But then like the day before is when it just hits me that I'm like, oh my God, I have to get on stage or I have to talk to these 50 to 100 people or, it just hits me. Like I don't have that anxiety like leading up to it, but right before it happens, it'll hit me.
I've made that mistake many times too. I think that I'm convincing myself, I'll feel fine for weeks and months leading up to it, and I think, oh, this time I beat it. Like I'm not thinking about it. It's gonna be fine. Then the morning I wake up for that, all of a sudden, like all the weeks of not stressing about it hits at once, and then. Yeah, I would almost rather stress a little bit for a few weeks than 3 weeks in one morning.
Yeah. And so just like, I'm trying to be better at preparing because it's like these are the kind of things you can't like wing. Like maybe I'm in a gallery and I'm going to say a couple words. I could kind of know what I'm going to say, but I think the thing that that I'm working on right now is just writing it all out and then practicing it multiple times. Just like so that you don't have to be reading from a script fully and you can kind of go off script and like have your points. But it's an art within itself.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes the preparation might be my biggest downfall. Like the more I think about it, the more I try to like envision how it's going to go, that might actually make it worse, and then it ends up going the furthest from what I thought it would be when it's that orchestrated. But I guess, this is just me like doing these small things every now and then. You're actually addressing like an educated art crowd about real things.
Yeah, I went to art school and I have like a master's in art. So it's not like my first rodeo of like trying to write or talk or present. But like I said, I graduated from grad school 10 years ago and it's still just like every time I'm like, I'm fine. And then the nerves hit and I'm like, oh God, I just blacked out and like forgot all my words and I have to like reset my mind and okay, take a breath, start again.
What about is your son comfortable with speaking? Like it sounds like that would be one of his like strong suits, but do you know if he likes it or if he gets scared too?
From what I can tell, I've watched him speak now twice, and he seems totally fine. I don't see any fear in his eyes. He's just really confident.
The dream. I don't think. I don't know. I'm kind of old enough that I wonder if I'm set in my ways a bit, but I would love to be better. Like I have friends too that gonna thrive off that thing. They volunteer to like give a speech whenever someone needs to, and they don't mind getting in front of people at a gathering and stuff. That like even around friends and family, it throws me off, and I'll always not love it. But I'm so jealous of people that can do it.
Same, same.
Was I mean, kind of a shift. Not really, but I'm curious, was collage work like has that always kind of been your like main thing, or did you get it like in school and whatever, were you doing other forms of art and then just figured out that one was the one you kind of wanted to do more of?
Yeah, I started going to school for graphic design. Um, and I really wanted to learn, like, yeah, I wanted to get a job. I was like, okay, if I learn graphic design, I'll be able to get a job. And so, Photoshop, Illustrator, product, logos, but I wasn't really passionate about it. And I really hated that I had to work with like people and like do something for a client. And like they would take us through all these exercises of like, you have to make this wine label and here's the brief. And like, I just, I always wanted to just do my own thing. So in a weird way, I think collage kind of relates to design because you're cutting up something that's already been designed. So I think I like the typography, the photography that I use, working with like editorial magazines and like art books. They've already gone through this process of design. So I think there's something about that I really like. But I always my dream is to like was to be a painter. But I there's like this painful process for me at least of trying to paint where it's just I am not a painter. And so what I really, I was in doing like painting one, painting two, and I just was kind of just miserable. And I was like, man, I am struggling with this. And then I'm taking art history classes at the same time and I learned about like Dada and like surrealism and how like political collage is and always will be. I feel like around World War One, people are cutting up newspapers and magazines and doing political acts. It happens again World War Two, the '60s. People are making collages about Vietnam, and so I started to see it as this very like punk avant-garde way of working. And so I started doing these collages and we'd have critiques in our class and it would just make people angry. They would be like, this is not art. Like, what the fuck is this? This is some bullshit. Like, I just spent like 10 days working on this oil painting and you made this collage in like 30 seconds. You know what I mean? So there was something provocative about collage where it kind of pissed people off. And I liked that. I was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna just make hundreds of these things and I'm gonna do collage because it was just like it wasn't something we were like it was just an art history thing. There was collage like exercises and like, foundations, but it's not something you go to school to study.
And so, like, when you were in school, was it not frowned upon, but like people didn't really like were you basically were you one of the only people like furthering collage work while everyone else was doing painting or more like standard art school stuff?
I mean, there was a lot of conceptual art happening. There was like people doing like sound art and like installations and sculpture and like lots of good art. Um, and I'm sure there was people doing collage, but it was more of this kind of like personal thing. And I actually had met like a friend of mine who was in the same like crew, a graffiti crew, from Boston, and he was showing me the way he cut paper, and he was like a mentor to me in graffiti, and so when I saw the way he was doing collages too, um, it was like outside of school is kind of where I really got into it because I was like, this is actually a very cool thing. And so this guy I met, he like taught me his techniques and kind of what paper to use and what kind of glues, and so that really kind of set it off too.
And what year around like when how long ago was this?
I think this was around 2006 when I really started getting into it. And then, when I was having my undergraduate thesis show, I was already published in a book from Berlin about collage because I had always just been posting all my collages on Flickr or Tumblr. And so I was kind of like nobody knew who I was in Denver or really cared, but I'd have like a collage go like not viral, but just get like thousands of likes. And so people started to find me online around the like Tumblr days before Instagram.
Yeah, there's definitely the good old days. Like I always chat with people on here that what you're talking about, like pseudo viralness meant was so much more back then than like going actually viral now would mean. Even like a post that went around with thousands or tens of thousands would actually get a ton of eyes on it. Now you could have something get millions of impressions and people probably just scroll past it. Anyway, like I feel people paid more attention to what was on the internet back then.
Yeah, you're right. The good old days. I just felt like it was very natural and it wasn't like this new kind of social media where it's all like kind of run by brands and like advertising. And I love Tumblr and Flickr where it was just artists or people or whatever, photographers just posting things and you would just see it on a timeline. And people were more,
Have you tried to explain that to Jonas at all? Like tell him the way things worked when you were younger? I wonder if he even been on those websites before.
yeah, when he was young, we created a Tumblr for his photography when he was like 7. So I always kind of like showed him creative things like that. We made Jonas's first website and he like did all these gifs of like squirrels. And I was like, I was in art school and I was raising him. So I was showing him all the things I was learning in school, you know? So he's definitely been around it all. But now, the Gen Z people, he has like a weird photo as his profile photo, and then he never has more than like 3 photos on his Instagram. He like posts something and it's up for a couple days, then he archives it. And it's like this new way of using Instagram. It's like anti-Instagram, and like the photos are kind of bad and like out of focus, or just like you know what I mean? It's like this certain aesthetic.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. My girlfriend works with a fair amount of Gen Z people, and we actually constantly we're like referring to it as Gen Z Instagram because they use it the same way. Only a few photos, never like up for that long. Always like, photos that are interesting, but they wouldn't have, like in my time, we probably wouldn't have posted something like out of focus like that because I don't know, people wanted to show off like more, not professional, but more like of a pristine aesthetic, I guess. And now I like bits of how things go nowadays, but I also will always reference like the 2000 to 2010 being a great time on the internet and less like diluted and watered down than things are now.
I absolutely agree. I mean, it's weird because I feel like you have to post stuff or you like don't exist, or like stories are, I like stories. Like sometimes I'll just really be posting a lot in the stories because I like how temporary it is. But, even when I was doing this move to Long Beach, I just kind of took a break from social media and I didn't post anything. And it was nice. It was like really nice to have a break. But I started to be like, whoa, like, who am I if I'm not like having my Instagram with like my recent work, or and so I've been really like just thinking about social media, like what is after Instagram? Is like, are we going to have anything after this? Are people going to go back to Tumblr, or are we going to, is everything going to have to be like TikTok videos? Because that's the last thing I want to do for my work, is to be like, hi everyone, welcome to my studio and here's the new collage I'm making. And like that whole thing of like TikTok videos is just annoying. And but I'm like, I totally watch them on Instagram Reels too. Like I'm like a sucker, but it's like not the thing I want to do, like be on camera and like talking and stuff, you know?
It relate to that so much too. I consume them way more than I should probably, but I would never want to make one.
Yeah, exactly. But what I'm thinking about now though is like, um, I'm like working on this zine with my son and like a friend who has a publishing project called Strange Ways. It's like graffiti, tattoos, photography. And so we're going to publish the book with him, the zine. And I'm thinking like, man, all I want to do right now is like go back to making zines of like my photography, like do a photography zine, do a collage zine, curate a zine, and just like put these like physical things back out into the world and just have them to give to people or trade. Also out here, I've been to the LA Art Book Fair twice over the last 2 years, and there's so many good zines and books that people are putting out that I really want to be part of that world and conversation. So a lot of my mind, like my energy for the studio is like keep making work, but think about it in like book format, like how to make a collection of all these things, not just for your profile, like a grid on Instagram, but as in a book.
Really interesting to me. Like as I complain about gonna the way things are going a bit, I feel now for like somehow with everything being so digital and the like TikTokification of everything, I still feel it's like one of the better times to be releasing zines and like handmade, there's something tangible that people can flip through. It's like that. Also, in a way, it's like the anti Instagram, like all the young people, I think, are on their phones so much that getting a break from it with something real is interesting to them too. I know I've been making zines for a long time, and I feel the like response to a zine now is maybe the strongest it's been in the whole time that I've been doing them.
For real, for real.
But when was the last time you put out just a like a DIY zine of your like photos?
Um, I put out a couple zines, or I was even in a couple zines with this crew called Knighted. Like they were like photographers. They do these photo books, and yeah, do you know them?
Yeah, when I before this, I had a retail space under the same name, Nowhere Fast, and we actually used to stock their publications.
Yeah, so I kind of like met them through Instagram, and I had them come out to Denver to do a show in this little gallery, and I got to meet them, and we I was part of a couple zines with like Nick, and so I around that time, I guess that was 2014, 2015 maybe. And then I was kind of making my own little zines. Then um, I did a risograph zine in 2020 of like a trip to New York and with some collages I made during a residency. But I think my big time of like making books or zines was in from 2008 to 2012. Around that time, I was working with these two artists, Christy Foom and Keenan Marshall Keller. Um, Christy was in Amsterdam, Keenan was in LA, and I was in Denver. And we started this project called Drippy Bone Books. And we made like 30 zines over the course of a couple years. And I was like really, really into it at that time. Like we had him at Printed Matter, we had him at Arcana in LA, and we were just like selling them and just like producing tons of these books. But then I got more into like the fine art side of things and I stopped making zines. So I feel like I have the language and I know how to do it. I haven't done it in a while. And when I'm going to these book fairs, I'm seeing so many beautiful books and zines that I'm just like, I need to, I need to make something like now.
It's a lot harder these days without Kinkos.
Yeah.
I just based on everything you said, I assume you're quite familiar with Kinkos back in the day.
We did Kinko. I mean, I think here we still have like a FedEx Kinkos. They kind of combined and you can do some printing there. But like when I was at college, um, they were like, I found this printer that was like being thrown away. It was like pretty big. Like it's like two people to kind of lift it. But I took that home and I used that for like a whole year, just like printing so many zines. I'll send you some pictures from my Flickr where they're all like archived. But I would just start curating and be like, hey, I have this zine project. Can I like make 20 copies of a zine of like screenshots of YouTube or like weird scrawls on like weird photography. And so just like these like comics too. So it was just like had this like really shitty printer and I used it till it died. And I made a bunch of zines like that. And then just, even going to anywhere there's a Xerox machine and just like making like really cheap zines and even trying to like walk out the door without paying for them at Kinko's.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking that was the best. But the king goes here was that like they were really relaxed, and either the kid working there gonna look the other way, or we can sneak out. But you can go and print a full zine for free.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember those days.
I wish it was like that now. But then I don't know. I kind of have an idea where they like. If you have to pay now, it kind of makes it a little more important. Like it's always nice to get over and like finesse the system and get it done cheap. But if it like now, if I have to pay to make a zine, I really want to make that zine and like put my all into it because it is like costing money that I've worked for. So I guess the pros and cons to each.
Yeah, I mean, back then I was in school and I was like basically living in poverty. I had like zero money, so it was all about racking and getting over and finessing everything I could. But now that I'm an adult with a job, it's like, it's nice to have a little bit of disposable income to do these little projects and do these little zines.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I enjoyed being young and poor as well, and I'm still kind of older and kind of poor, but maybe a bit less broke than I would have been. So I uh I think before we were recording, you mentioned trading photos back in the day. For I didn't know if it was safe to bring up graph, but I guess we can lightly touch on it. And the trading of photos is something definitely lost over time, and I used to partake in it as well. And I know you did. You in my very preliminary research, I found out that I mean, is this true? You used to run a would it even be a blog or a photo archive called Freight Life?
Yes. Wow, that's
When how long ago was that? I pride myself on knowing as much about the history of graph and photos, and I that one escaped me. I never heard of it, and sorry for saying I never heard of it. But do you mind telling me a bit about it and how long ago that was?
yeah, that wow, that's a deep cut, man. Good on the research. I don't even know how you found that. But that was my first zine, actually. So I was shooting a lot of 35 millimeter of the trains that like me and my friends were doing, and then just like benching like nonstop, like every day, just like racking film, benching photos, dropping off at like grocery stores, having them develop it, and then like stealing that. Also, it was just like this whole time where I was just racking a lot. But that was my first, like, let me see what year that was. That was probably 98, maybe. And there was this youth center in downtown Denver called The Spot. And it was kind of like four elements, kind of like you could paint the walls, and there's guys breakdancing, and there's like DJs and rappers, there's like ciphers. It was like this like nonprofit that was like a youth center for like kids, and they had like those Macs, that giant like Macs that were like different colors, like purple and pink or whatever. And it was my first time ever like working on a Mac. And there was these, counselors, and they'd be like, "Hey, like, do you want to learn how to do this or do that?" Like, and I was like, "Yeah, I have all these photos." And so they showed me how to scan my photo. I think I was like 17 or something. I was like pretty young. No, maybe like 18. And so at the spot, they like helped me scan all these, and we made a website, a blog, and then I got linked from like Art Crimes to my blog, which was cool. And I think through that, I met a ton of people. Like being on Art Crimes in like the late 90s was like I don't know, it just was like, I don't even know how that happened. So we had the the blog, and then I they showed me how to make a little zine, and then I had like a Hotmail, like greatlife at hotmail.com. And people would just hit me. I was like getting hit up like once a week, and someone would be like, "Hey, I'm in Richmond or I'm in Chicago. And what's your address? I'll mail you a pack." And I was like, "What is this?" And so my mom was freaking out because the mailbox was just like these fat packs of freight photos that people wanted me to put on my blog or in my zine. And so that was kind of my first like entry into like the network of using the mail and like graffiti and like the internet altogether.
That's funny. I actually gonna ask if it was art crimes or 12 ounce that like gave life to that.
Oh man, it was at first it was 12 ounce. Yeah, you're right. Like it was a mixture of both. I don't think I got on the 12 ounce until after that art crimes link, but then I was like living on 12 ounce for so long. And the crazy thing is, I met Jonas's mom on 12 ounce on the Denver 12 ounce thread. She was painting and she was posting photos and we both were and we like met up and painted together. And then we ended up like being in a relationship for a number of years.
That very cool. That's like nowadays people meet on whatever internet dating site or whatever, but being able to claim a child was formed out of a 12 ounce relationship, that's untouchable. That's pretty cool.
That's insane. I haven't thought about that in forever.
That's I mean, like I feel I had a few zines from back in that day that I got from people who I probably met or like saw advertised on 12 ounce. And I know it was so much harder back then to distribute stuff, so people might say like currently things are a lot easier to find and easier to access. But I think that was probably the best, like my most nostalgic in the time I look back on the funnest. Like that's how I kind of learned about zines, and that was like, trading flicks was probably the coolest part of all this. Still, like all the things I've done until now, I think back then would have been my like favorite era.
Yeah. I learned so much about everything. Like who I am today is because of that whole thing. And like I still know like a lot of these people, like this artist in LA that I've been in is like I've known him for 20 plus years, 25 years. And we met through that, like through him mailing me pictures. And then we ended up like I came out to Chicago and I like stayed with him and we painted. And then he came to Denver. And then we realized that like the guy in my crew was his cousin. I mean, this was like before social media. So you would just like find things out, or I would just go on a trip to Chicago and not even know. Like, I've never been to Chicago, but I got to meet this guy at this spot at this time. And then, like, we've just been trading pictures for a year. And now we're like hanging out in another city. And so I learned so much from that time that I still use that today of like, not just being like a networker or like a stamp licker, but like really like owning it and like the people you meet, like respecting them and like being curious, asking questions and collaborating and just trying to learn and like build stuff together.
Do you still have all the photos from back in that time?
When I was doing this move, I did find shoeboxes of photos. So I do have a lot, but I remember our basement got flooded like, I don't know, 15 years ago, and I lost like half of it, but I still have like a good amount of them.
That's I guess funny might not be a good descriptor, but I also accumulated so many photos, and living where I am, I still use the internet to like source photos from all over the place. And then I forget, early 2000s, maybe like 2004, my family, we had a house fire, and everyone was okay, nothing, there was smoke damage and stuff, but for some reason, all we lost in that fire was all my photos. Like my room was in the basement and I lost all of them.
Oh no, that's fucked.
Yeah, it was. I mean, when I was young, it didn't affect me as much then because you're kind of young and not too in tune with emotions and stuff. But now when I think back, like when people ask, like spend your life learning the history about your city. Why don't you have any like graph photos? And I had hundreds. I had every like I would have been the city's historian when it came to that, but they're all gone. And from what I know, no one has them because I like
Damn.
even back then it was weird. There were writers in the city that didn't have like they didn't even really photograph their own stuff, and they were like
No.
real like good active like very good writers. Maybe they have flicks of their stuff, but like I was taking photos of everything, so I had everyone's work. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was doing it, but then I was also documenting it. Like I would
Mm-hmm.
spend as much time going around the city taking photos as I would like actively being a part of it.
Yeah, man. That's so true. That's crazy to have to lose all that, man. That's a lot. And not until looking back and being like, I would have been the historian of, you know, my city had I not lost all those photos. That's crazy.
This is really petty and selfish, I guess it's funny to admit on here, but I take a bit of pleasure in knowing that like if I don't have them, at least no one else has them. Like it would hurt even more if I lost all mine, but then like some of my friends from that era, they had all of theirs, but no one has it, which is in a way cooler. I think like there's no documented history of anything.
Wow. You said something like it's true. Some of the best writers, they just weren't photographers. They were just like crazy vandals that just like destroyed shit. And then there was other people like us who were like, yeah, I mean, I wasn't like crazy, crazy. I mean, I painted, but I like really enjoyed the documentation side of it all.
That's I mean not true in any way. I we can keep the names out of it, but I'm quite familiar with what you wrote. I think you're very underselling yourself. That's not fair to say, and I have to interject before once people figure it out, they're also gonna agree.
Yeah, it feels like a lifetime ago, but yeah, no, we had some fun. And I just remember people in the crew just being like, I can't take a good photo. And then I remember learning from other people like how to line up a boxcar in the corner of the viewfinder, how to put like a piece of tissue over the flash, how to like shoot at an angle. Like I just really liked that whole part of it. Whereas like other friends were just like, we'd get like the worst photos back and be like, oh my God, like the glare or like this is dark or like just so many bad photos too that we just like throw away and be like, man, this is like worthless. So starting to think like, okay, how do you get your photos to look like that? Like, how is this good? And just be like, all right, there's a couple little tricks, or use this film and don't use that like speed, use this or this camera, like the Olympus, the little sliding door on the front. Like, just those were like the best cameras in that time for me that I used so much.
Yeah, I also like I paid attention to all this and all the tricks that I learned from like photographing graph is for sure like 100% why I take photos. Now I remember the time when I realized you can actually use this camera like I only took photos of graph for years probably, and then I figured out you can actually point this thing at anything. Like it doesn't have to be graph. Like you can document anything, and then that's I like kind of sprung off from there. But anything like any like camera tricks, basically anything to do with the camera, I would have learned from adapting to taking graph photos and documenting that.
Yeah, I think I only photographed like, trains for so long in like Denver graffiti. But then a big influence on me is Dash Snow. And so when I got into Polaroids, I was more of like trying to like, underneath bridges in the alleys, like people like drugged out on the street and just like party photos, people doing like drugs. And like I was like so inspired by that aesthetic too of like this dude's like a sick writer in New York, but he also has this like Polaroid series that's just like all these graph people hanging out or just like people on the streets. And then also he was doing the collages too. And it was like that was such a huge inspiration too.
Yeah, that I mean he was a huge inspiration for me as well. I spent probably half my time on 12 ounce and the other half on tiny vices,
Yep,
trying to just memorize everything and emulate, or I mean, probably bite at that point. Like just trying to figure out how to be more like that.
absolutely.
I think I've eaten up enough of your day, but I have one more deep cut. Hopefully, it brings up good memories. What's going on with Modern Witch?
Oh yeah. Um, that was you know, again, Christy, who was doing the book project with me. She was the singer. That was our band when I was in art school. And in Denver, there was this really cool DIY music scene where like everybody was in art school, but they were also in like punk bands or like DJs or just everyone was like there was this cool creativity happening where you did kind of like everything. And so one of my homies in my crew in Denver, he's a drummer and he like collected synthesizers and he just like got me so hype on music and he was in all these bands and he was like doing graph too. And so he would just be like, "Yo, come over, let's jam." And like here's a keyboard, and he knew how to record on like a 4 track and everything. So um, at that time he was raising his kids and he wasn't doing as much graph, but he's like an OG Denver writer. And then we started that band, and it was like Christy, Cam, and I, and that project was like really fun because it kind of just blew up on like Tumblr and stuff. And we went to Amsterdam and played at the Foam Photography Museum. We did like a mixtape for Vice magazine, and we, opened up for like a bunch of shows in Denver at all the different venues. And it was like, we put out like 2 7 inches and we put out like a double disc 12, like two 12-inch records, as like a archive of all the recordings. But it just started like, you know, this kind of weird music, like when I think like Ariel Pink was like first coming out, or when we first discovered that whole kind of LA scene, mixed with like my homie Cam's like MPC. He was kind of doing these like hip hop beats, and it was kind of this weird art hip hop something in it's from Denver, which is like at the middle of nowhere. It's just like a such a small city at that time in like 2008. But we were just putting out cassettes, and I was making all the art for the flyers and making all the art for the album and for the albums. And it was just such a fun project.
There was a like a heavy visual component, right? Like all the live shows had a lot of visuals.
Yeah, yeah. So when I was in school and like I was doing graphic design, I decided to switch from graphic design to digital art because I still wanted to do stuff that was digital, but I didn't want to have to like work for clients and create logos. So I started doing a lot of like net art. Really, I was just creating like Tumblr pages that were conceptual, and like Modern Witch was kind of one of these things too where it was just very like Tumblr, YouTube kind of thing. And I was learning how to do like projection mapping, and so it was like the identities of us was always hidden for like a very long time. It was just like art that represented the music.
Like the little bit of info I could find about it, it sounded very cool. Like it sounded like a good harmony of a lot of different like the music, but then it seemed like you guys were all like obviously very close friends that fed off each other, but then the visual component was really interesting too. Like I mean a lot of people make great music and focus on that, but it sounded like you guys had good music, but then really cool like unique visuals to go with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, it was like visual first and then kind of the sound supported it. And for me, it was like, I'm not a musician really, but I I really liked kind of minimal things and kind of just like, programming like a drum machine or like learning how to use the MPC. I had an MPC and it's kind of like sampling. It's like collaging in a way. The way we would do it is like sample stuff and then kind of program it and bang it out or like layer it in like GarageBand and just like make these like sound collages. So the recording process was very DIY. And like even our first like recordings before Kim joined us, it was like we just like set up a VHS camera in the studio and just like and like have that pick up the sound. And then we'd run the VHS tape into the MacBook, into GarageBand. And it sounded like it was from like the 70s or 80s or something. It was just all on tape and it was like hissing. And it was just very creepy and kind of weird. It was like, that's why we called it Modern Witch too. It was like this kind of like spooky, like lost cassette that you found like in a thrift store from like 1983.
Do you have any aspirations to get back into music at all? Or is that of the past?
I always think about it, but when I moved here, I got rid of like my Moog and my other synthesizers, and I, I don't know. I don't think so. I feel like I've moved on from that, even though I think about it a lot, and I always like I have the itch to do it, but it's like as I've gotten older too, I've just like I can't do graffiti and art and photography and be in a band and be a father. And so like as when I was younger, I could do so many things, I felt like, but now my mental energy is like really trying to be like, all right, let's focus on like a couple of these things, like your job, your art practice, and maybe and now like kind of reintroducing photography because I'm in a new place. And so I'm really excited to just like go explore and document it.
Yeah, I mean, the older I get, I have all these interests, and ideally, I would gonna try to further all of them, but it's kind of impossible or seemingly impossible. I'm in the same boat as you. I choose the few I think I can maintain, and there are other ones I think about, but they maybe fall by the wayside.
Yeah, I know, man. Getting old.
I don't know if he would be into it or if you would be into him being into it, but I think it would be really cool to interview Jonas.
Oh my God. Yes, we should do that because then you could hear his side of the story.
Yeah, I feel like we built it up. Anyone listening is probably thinking like, "There's so much lore behind this guy. We need to know more."
I love it. Let's do it. I'll connect you two. Just see what he says.
Yeah, that would be incredible.
Awesome.
I mean, beyond that though, like I was saying, I feel I took up as much of your day as I said I would, probably a bit more, to be honest. But thank you so much for answering all the questions. I know they're always a bit random and out of order, but that was really fun. I learned a ton. Hopefully, you didn't fully hit it.
What? Oh no, quite the opposite. I really enjoyed talking to you, man, and I'm happy to keep connecting. And I want to like mail you some photos just to kind of do it again because now I'm thinking like I should send you like this new zine I'm making and also just some photos too, just to kind of have that analog, that kind of photos in the mail kind of thing again. And yeah, man, I want to stay in touch. I really dig what you're doing. I love the whole aesthetic and vibe and the guests and what you're doing. It's really cool, man. It's inspiring.
I would love that. I know, like I was saying, you already sent me a couple quite professional emails, but when you have a minute, send me your address and I'll put one of my books in the mail for you next week. But before I forget, do you want to take a minute, let anyone listening know where they can find you or your work or any of your projects, anything you want to promote? The mic is yours. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly just kind of I have a website, mariozoots.com, and on Instagram, I'm at Zoots at Zoots. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Nice and short, concise. Some people have many places where they can be found. It's a lot to keep up with.
Yeah, I know. I mean, they're there if you Google it, I think, but mostly I just put all my updates for my exhibitions on Instagram right now. It's the easiest place.
It's the best way. I complain about that app probably more than most people, but it definitely is the best way to get a lot of info to a lot of people. So I'll link everything accordingly. Again, please send me your address when you have a minute. Got the photos, got everything I need. I think beyond that, enjoy the day and the rest of the weekend. Good luck on the show on the 11th,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, at Leon Gallery.
Good luck with the public speaking. Hopefully it's not too bad.
It'll be a little bad, but then once I'm done, I'll be happy that I did it.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Good talking with you.
Yeah, enjoy.
All right, later.
Peace.
Peace.